we're going to get into seats, and we have a really full program this morning. And this is LeadersConnect.
I'm not going to go first.
I just need a table so I don't end up wearing my coffee.
We also do Connect these. And since it's a great crowd this morning, we're kind of sold out. And there's an aisle here for people to come around.
Got way more chairs.
Here's what I want you to do on this next part. All right, everybody got to listen to this.
Except it was too damn busy. My team was there, but I don't think it was board meeting.
Here's the exercise. All right, so I'm a big one on learning as a lifelong process. And we think about that lifelong learning as when we go to events like this and we learn. By the way, boys starting out, you're all encouraged to use your cell phones, other than in my class. Send out texts, tweets.
I never
posts,
tweet,
whatever.
not me.
No, it's good. That's good. Well, whatever. You can send pictures, and certainly feel free. Here's the leaders' exercise today. Lifelong learning. Actually, I learned this from Tel.
Thank you.
Stolen your thunder.
We've all learned from Tel.
That's a learning. Good idea.
Here's the exercise.
Oh my God.
All right, think about the past week. We're at Friday. All right, so this is your fifth day of the week, work week. If you're a good leader, you would have learned something by this time. You would have learned a lesson. All right, so I want you to think about your past week, and what's a lesson that you learned, or you wish you had learned before you put your foot in your mouth, about yourself, about leadership. I'll give you an example, something I learned. I usually think about myself as an extrovert, and I like to go out and be around people. Well, this week, I started the week by babysitting with our grandchildren in Washington, D.C. And my wife, Pat, stayed, so she was gone all week, and I had every evening to myself. And I didn't decide this ahead of time, but I didn't go out any of the evenings. So I was home 4 evenings in a row. I read a book, I organized a bunch of stuff, I kept the house clean, which was a big challenge. When you're all by yourself, you realize you're the one creating the mess. So I learned that I could be by myself, and actually I could really enjoy myself. So last night I had an opportunity to go to the basketball game, or I could have gone to hear a speaker who was talking about a book about Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie, which I love Bob Dylan. I said, I'm just going to stay home and read and chill out and just enjoy myself. And I did, and I really had a great week, and I feel really energized. So that's a lesson, that I don't have to be with people, and that I can enjoy myself by being alone. I'm an only child, so I should have known that. So I want you to now turn to a neighbor, and if there's 3 of you, that's fine too. And just share who you are, what you do, and what's a lesson that you learned this week. Okay? If you can't think of it, and maybe it was a lesson that you should have learned because you did the same mistake that you've done 20 other weeks. Okay? So take about 3 minutes to do that.
I love to be in the audience for this one.
Yeah.
No, I don't think, okay, now we got it.
Hi, I'm Jerry Marco. I help people be more productive and efficient. I decided to take my own lesson, and I cleared the clutter of decades of seminars and talks. Everything is on the computer anyway, and I just took armloads and threw them out. And it's totally freeing and exciting, and I can't wait to do some more. Somebody else?
By the way, we're trying to regulate the heat, so it's really hot in here, and now it's cold. So please bear with us if we try to manage this, because it's a big crowd for this room. Anybody else want to share a key learning? Anybody else want to share? Okay, Ed? Let's say who you are and what you do.
Les Settle, I'm with Edward Jones Investments. I just got back last night from vacation, and I learned the value, even at my age, of somebody stealing an hour of your vacation time. I will never, ever rent a car off airport site again. At least $100 extra to rent the car on the airport.
The lesson that you should have learned is never rent a car from somebody called Fast Eddie's car rental.
Or Green Motion for that.
Green
matter.
Motion, whatever. All right. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of great lessons out there. I think I'm going to ask Jean to share her story about how she knows when her husband. Is it too
Oh, sure,
private?
go ahead.
Yeah, you can do it, but she said she could relate to my mess. But could you explain why?
Sure. Rob was talking about his mess that he leaves behind. I know exactly what my husband did while I was gone because I can see. He read the paper there. He sat in an Afghan with the cat there. He ate dinner in front of the TV.
So we all leave traces and stuff. So welcome to Leaders Connect. This first part is an exercise we try to do to get to know each other. And the biggest advantage of coming here is you get to know other people, and hopefully that'll help you in your business. You might even make a friend, which is more valuable than business, as we have learned. And I want to thank our sponsors. Leaders Connect has been going on for about almost 20 years. And lately, the last 10 or so with Bank of, I guess it's about 5 with Bank of Ann Arbor, maybe 3 with Raymond. We've had great sponsors, and Rayle has been with us here, Roger, probably about 10 years, right?
Maybe not that long.
Yeah. Roger is a consummate video guy, and what's the name of your company, Roger?
R2V.
R2V. Okay.
Yeah, Roger Rayle Virtual Ventures.
Roger Rayle's Virtual Ventures. So thank you, Roger. And Roger has all these episodes of Leaders Connect on a YouTube channel, and so I think it's a great thing to be able to go and check those out for many years that he's been doing this. You want to come up for Raymond and Mike? Where's Mike Cole? He's going to come up for Bank of Ann Arbor and talk about their great ventures and some things that are going on. Mike, you got some.
I want to get a picture of all you guys. This is a great,
right.
come on, this is a great panel. Rob, come on. Chris, get in there.
He's actually taking a selfie, but he's
All
not.
right, Rob, you gotta move. Rob, move over. Rob, move over. You're right in front of Mike. Move over next to Paul. I can get you.
I'll slide in here. I'll stay.
All right, what didn't need to be this complicated. Here we go.
All right, Mike,
Thank
go
you.
up there now.
Chris, you want to say what's going on?
You disrupt the system you're measuring.
And I got some good company there with
There you
Paul
go.
and Mike.
One more, Roger's gonna take another
Oh,
one.
all right.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, here we are. Great.
All right, good morning.
Stand on that side.
Raymond, good morning.
Good morning.
Get over here so you can see you.
Gotta be out here, the mechanic.
Over the camera.
Raymond is very proud to sponsor Rob's Leadership Breakfast. Raymond's a regional financial services firm with one awesome office in Ann Arbor. I see my colleague Debbie Crone out there in the stands. Debbie. This topic I'm particularly excited about. I think we can all admit that the forces bringing the Ann Arbor and Detroit business communities are very powerful right now. I know Michael, you and I have spent the last 2 days together in Detroit.
Right.
It's been great.
Yeah.
I also happen to be on the board of Detroit Public Television. Do we have any Channel 56 viewers and supporters out there? I know. And my good friend Tom Shapansky has recently joined us. He's an Ann Arbor hero from the University of Michigan Development Office. So
Now
I know Tom and I are working together to send the story of Detroit out to through the public TV channels. So thank you very much.
Well, good morning and welcome everybody. I'm Michael Cole, Bank of Ann Arbor. I head up a group here at the bank, the Technology Industry Group. So we work with tech companies, life science, venture capital firms in southeastern Michigan. As Chris mentioned, we were both, the last couple nights, we've been proud to be sponsors of a couple of events in Detroit as well. There was a Accelerate Michigan business plan competition last night.
Other people? With us,
Yeah, a few of us here. I think Jamie was, he was leaving right at the end, so thanks for being here early this morning. And then 2 nights ago, the Michigan Venture Capital Association had their annual awards meeting out at the new Little Caesars Arena. So there's a lot of great things going on in Detroit. It's a perfect time for a panel about Detroit. I just want to, Jackie Jenkins is here also from Bank of Ann Arbor. Jackie's in our trust and investment management area and works with companies on their 401k plans. So thanks again for being here.
Mike, are you doing the welcome home thing on Wednesday? Is that for Or is that?
I've been to that before, but yeah, that's a
You
big.
mentioned what that
yeah.
is, and it might be interesting for some folks.
Yeah, Wednesday
night, I think.
Wednesday night. So Ann Arbor Spark puts together a welcome home event since a lot of folks that leave the area come back home for Thanksgiving. So they have a welcome event for like the tech community. If you're in the tech community and you're living in Boston or Silicon Valley or something, but you're coming home for the holidays, this is a great event to get together with all your old friends from school and all that kind of
I
stuff.
think that's the biggest bar night of the year.
That's right. Another reason to go to the bar. Right. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys for doing this. We're going to get right into the program. I want to just say, LeadersConnect is really proud to have these folks. It comes out of a meeting that we had, it's about a couple months ago, where we met about how can we bridge the distance between Detroit and Ann Arbor, more than just the freeway, but that if we're going to be a great business community, it has to be the region and not just one city and the other. And as we were talking, we realized there's so much going on in Detroit that people in Ann Arbor may not be connected to. So we're going to do this event today to bring what's going on in Detroit to the folks in Ann Arbor. And then we're going to do an event in Detroit in the winter, which is going to be the other way around. We're going to bring things that are going on in Ann Arbor to Detroit. So the idea here is that we want to create opportunities. I work with individuals. I'm an executive coach. I work with individuals and teams. And I want to help people find opportunities that can bring them together. So you don't just think about, I only know I work in Ann Arbor. Where was Tom? He said he was working in Ann Arbor, commuting from East Side, Sterling Heights. Now you're working in Detroit. How many of you do work both in Detroit and Ann Arbor? How many of you have? Okay, so a good half of you already crossed the border, crossed 275. Mike Brennan, you cover all this for your new set. You covered cross 275 all the time. Huh? Okay, so don't be afraid. You know, there's traffic lights on both sides. But I want to get started with the panel, and I'm just going to, rather than try to do introductions, I'm just going to pass the mic and let you guys do quick introductions, and then each person is going to take about 5 minutes or so to describe a particular aspect of what they do. We're going to have a conversation, and then we're going to open it up to the audience to have a conversation. And I know there's some other people here that are going to join the conversation. So with no further ado, let me turn it to Paul. I got to tell you, Paul, your dad was with Motown, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. Okay.
A little bit.
Very one of the big actually musicians at Motown. Congratulations! You just won a big award. Right?
Yeah, a big award called the Hal Award.
Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, we could probably talk more about my dad. That'd be way more interesting. Paul Reiser Jr. So I do try to extract some of the credibility from Dad. So until people ask, I leave the Junior off. So then they figure it out. Yeah, there you go. But native Detroiter, managing director of TechTown, TechTown's tech-based entrepreneur programs here at TechTown Detroit. I've been there for 3 years now. Essentially, TechTown, for those who don't know, is Detroit's longest-standing incubator and accelerator. 17 years now. We've been in existence, founded by Henry Ford, Wayne State, and General Motors. And I kind of like to feel like we sit at the nexus of a lot of the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem activities in the city of Detroit. We do a ton of work via collaborations. Many of the panelists up here keep me extremely busy and up late with emails and projects and great things that we're able to do together in order to evolve the ecosystem. But TechTown's work even extends outside of the physical kind of core border of Detroit. Do a ton of work in Washington, Oakland County, working with U of M Fast Forward Medical Innovation. Gene and I have the Zero Lure Fund folks coming down to Detroit and TechTown to talk about deal flow and opportunities in partnership. Also, obviously with TechTown inherent in the name, we are fortunate to have a labs or tech-based business unit, which is about a third of our clients that we'll work with in any given year. So we'll touch probably 450 to 500 engagements or companies that we're actually serving. Most of them early stage, probably 75% of them are pre-revenue. So we kind of feed the pipeline. We're kind of like the top of the funnel. But we also, do a lot of syndicating, so to say, or working with other collaborators, investors, coaches, mentors, other organizations in order to feed that pipeline and make sure that entrepreneurs are getting what they need. Pretty much industry agnostic with respect to the labs and the tech work. What a lot of people don't know is that 2/3 of the businesses that TechTown will work with in any given year will not be tech. They'll actually be place-based businesses. Businesses like Zingerman's, coffee shops, restaurants, small manufacturers. And 4 to 5 years ago, we realized that Midtown and downtown were definitely on the cusp of a great rebirth and regrowth. And there was a lot of great investment being placed into Midtown, downtown. But there's another 140 square miles of the city of Detroit where small business owners and entrepreneurs were kind of waving their hands saying, IPOs are great and VCs are great, but that's not me. And I still need marketing support, and I still need business support, and I still need technical support services, and I still need social media assistance, and architecture, and loans, and funding. And so we answered that call by stepping into neighborhoods and actually setting up satellite offices. And now, fast forward 5 years later, we have offices and or presence in 7 different neighborhoods, and we service entrepreneurs across the entire city of Detroit, actually, through commercial corridors in order to help small businesses grow, lifestyle businesses, we like to call them. Awesome and fun work. And it's really starting to really kind of matriculate out, not only across the city of Detroit, but also through the state of Michigan. We got more and more cities coming to us and saying, we want to know more about that work. How would you do it? And we treat it as open source. It's not a consulting engagement. It's not a matter of, hey, we'll tell you a little bit and we'll give you the rest if you sign this contract. It's really an open source tell-all. Whatever we learn, our mistakes, our bumps, our bruises, our successes, we share. And that's been a ton of fun work. But also the third part of our work is a 140,000 square foot facility that actually sits right across the street from NextEnergy. That is where a lot of, not only obviously our TechTown team lives, but also 160 different businesses are in this physical space. It's an incubator and also provides acceleration services. 13 different meeting rooms, 3 to 4 or sometimes even 5 events a week, and upwards of 15, 16, 17,000 visitors per month to this physical place that houses institutions like Lyft, like Mercedes-Benz, like Data Driven Detroit, like NIH, like Henry Ford. The list just goes on, and it's a great place now that over the course of time has really built a kind of DNA where the service providers, the partners, and the people in this physical building understand the journey of an entrepreneur, and they really meet them where they are. So bumping into a lawyer at the coffee shop will not get you a bill for $75 for a 3-minute conversation, but it'll get you a, hey, let's talk for 15, 20 minutes over here and just see what you're doing, where you are, and how we can help. And I invite all of you to, if you haven't already, to come and visit us at TechTown Detroit, and I'll let Mike kind of tell the story. I'll tell you about my dad off.
Say what he does.
I want to hear you laugh.
So I'll mention it. My dad is a producer and arranger from Motown. He started at Motown back in the early 60s, straight out of Cass Technical High School. He was a trombonist, and he was asked to come to Motown, and he became an arranger, writing strings and arrangements for the likes of Diana Ross, Four Tops, Temptations, Stevie Wonder, and the list just goes on and on. But he's had a long career standing of 50 plus years of helping artists all across the world, and many of the songs and the hits that we listen to, thousands literally, that he's been able to contribute to. He's an original funk brother, and he just received this great award called the Heroes and Legends Award, their 29th or 30th annual dinner in Beverly Hills, where Barry Gordy, who actually brought my dad into Motown, actually awarded him this award. It was fabulous and great for my kids to be able to see granddad, receive this award. So it was fabulous. So we can talk more.
So it's always tough to go after Paul. Like that again. Yeah.
After senior, not after junior.
So, just out of curiosity, how many of you have been to Detroit, downtown, midtown in the last, I don't know, 2 years? Wow, okay. I'd say probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would not have been the case. I mean, almost 100% participation there. My name is Mike Dergis. I'm with partner with the Hunter Group. We're an executive search firm. We cover a boutique firm covering pretty much all industries and positions from mid-management controllers on up to CEOs, presidents, etc. I'm in Ann Arbor County, but my parents, born and raised in Detroit. My grandparents spent all of their adult lives in Detroit, so kind of Grandmont, Warren area. So I'd be going down from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and then professionally in the 2000s, spending a fair amount of time. Go down to TechTown a lot. Yep. There's a lot going down there, and yeah, if you guys get a chance to head down there, it's definitely a place to kind of meet people and then make those random connections. But my kind of passion, the thing I'm really interested in Southeast Michigan, is that talent attraction, retention. They mentioned that the homecoming next week for Wednesday. Bringing people back into the state is really important. They graduate from college, they want to go to the big city, Chicago, New York, kind of spread their wings a little bit. And then they get, into their 30s, start to think about having kids and start thinking, hey, okay, I'd rather have kids grow up in Michigan, back in kind of the home state. And so anything, what we can do to attract those individuals back into town from, into Detroit, into the suburbs, wherever, as long as they're coming back into the state. And then one of the things that we talked about in terms of why we're doing this is to grow the regionalism and to view Southeast Michigan more as a region. Actually, I was at TechTown yesterday for an event, and two of the guys that were very instrumental in the Amazon bid that just went out were talking about bringing it together. And a couple of the interesting comments were, one, we couldn't do it just as Detroit. 700,000 people in Detroit proper wasn't the mix that they were looking for. But if you look Southeast Michigan, 5.4 million. Okay, now we can start to talk. Ann Arbor, railing opportunities. Matched transit was one of those issues where we probably didn't do quite so well on. But saying that, even they're saying that 5 years ago, we couldn't have come together as a region that quickly to put together that strong of a proposal. And I mean, it really was an all hands on deck. Everybody was involved in this proposal, led by Dan Gilbert and Bedrock, and a lot of funding behind it. But that, I think, is one of the cool things that we're starting to do as a region. It's really to kind of come together and see ourselves and see, okay, Detroit's the anchor. That's the word, you go everywhere in the world, everybody knows Detroit. But to be able to say, okay, we're from Detroit, Detroit's this broad region, we've got a lot to offer, and that's why you can kind of grow your businesses here.
Good morning. Good morning. You could use some more energy, guys. Zingerman's coffee and pastries in there. Good morning. Good morning. That's not better. Thank you, Robert. This is the second time he's putting me on the stage. Thank you. My name is still Ganesan. I'm a serial entrepreneur, business leader, writer, blogger, philanthropist, and also a movie producer. I'm involved in three things. I'm a president of an organization called TiE. So we just concluded a conference in Detroit, Bay at the Ganesan Center. It's one of the largest entrepreneurial conferences in Michigan. The purpose of the conference was to really bring all the entrepreneurs and really expose them to all the latest and greatest technology. So we almost showcase every technology under the sun and the moon, I would say, starting with connected mobility, digital health, fintech, blockchain, cryptocurrency, connected cities, you name it. So that's what we showcased last week. We had over 400 attendees participating in the conference. We had TechTown participating with us. We had NextEnergy participating with us. So that's what we did. And then we also had mobility competition. We had TiEcon awards. We showcased a lot of entrepreneurs. So that's what I do. It's a non-profit organization. I volunteer my time. And the whole conference was put together by volunteers. And so the idea is to really showcase Detroit, showcase Michigan, and how do we move forward, as a city and as a state, and I think we accomplished the goal. So I would encourage all of you to attend the conference next year if you didn't attend this year. So that's one thing I'm doing. Second thing is a concept called Pitch Club. So one of the ideas I have is really how do we cross-pollinate? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurial clusters. We have Detroit, we have Ann Arbor, we have Grand Rapids, we have Lansing, but none of these ecosystems are connected. And so the idea is that if we make them connected, I believe we could be comparable to Silicon Valley. So we don't need to go there and hunt for opportunities. We have opportunities right in your own backyard. So we are partnering with TechTown. We are also hosting an event at NextEnergy in Arbor Park, the Star Garden in Grand Rapids, and even in Lansing. So the idea is to have 3 entrepreneurs pitch. We have a successful entrepreneur talk about the journey, the lessons learned, so the budding entrepreneurs can learn from there. I think we have completed 2. I think the next one we are hosting right back in Ann Arbor. And so I would encourage each one of you to attend because we need everyone. It's just not, the government cannot do it, one entrepreneur cannot do it, one incubator, accelerator cannot do it, but I think we as a people can get together. If you're really serious about creating opportunities for the next generation, so we ought to get involved. So that's the second initiative I'm involved. Third, we are launching a concept called Detroit FinTech Challenge. I think right now we are planning to host sometime in April. Again, working with Paul.
I told you he keeps me busy.
He wasn't kidding. And he doesn't respond within 24 hours. I told him I'll be in his driveway to make sure. So that's what we do. So the idea there is to really, if you really look at Michigan, besides mobility, besides health, what are the areas that we can say that we are really good at it? It's not, we don't have that many. We have agri, we have food processing, but besides that, so I know Dan Gilbert has launched a Detroit FinTech Association, is working on them, but what we are trying to do is to really take some actions. Actions meaning, how do we create that community? So what we are trying to do is, bring the banks, bring the investment companies, insurance companies, auto, and even healthcare, and really ask them, hey, what are your real challenges? And have those challenge statements, and then bring the entrepreneurial community. It's a combination of a startup weekend and a hackathon or a datathon. It's really a hybrid of all those concepts. The idea is really to create real opportunities rather than academic projects. Nothing wrong with academic projects. I know Robert, is not gonna, hopefully he's not gonna be upset with what I say, but we need real deal, because real opportunities come from the real companies, and that's what we're working on. How do we monetize such opportunities? And then my pitch club host is already here, Michael Murphy. He's doing an amazing job. So we are going, I forgot to mention about him, so he's there. And then that's what I'm doing.
Mike?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mike. So with the FinTech community, that's what we're really working on, is to work around those areas and really create a vibrant opportunities for all the entrepreneurs, and also make the city vibrant and really relevant. Because if you're not working on the latest disruptive and cutting-edge technologies, we're going to lose the edge, and that's really what I'm working on. And the fourth thing is really one of the challenges I see is really, if you really look at the Detroit, literacy is not there. We are the richest nation on the planet Earth, and yet our city's literacy rate is only 50%. I come from a third world country. I think even there, I don't see this kind of a literacy rate. So I think as a city, as a state, as a human being that we live here, I think we should do a lot more to really address that, because it has cascading effect. It's not just literacy, because if a person is not able to read at the age of 3, you can almost predict that they're going to be on the wrong side of the law. And so why are we keep complaining about, oh my God, the crime rate is high, but we're not intervening at the right time, at the right place, but that's where you have the bang for the buck. So through the Kaibakits Foundation, what we're trying to do, how do we help them really learn at the right time? And we are focusing on it. Obviously, I'm a little guy, I'm a small guy, of course, literally, and in terms of what I can do, but I think collectively we should work on those areas, so I'm also involved in that. And then the last but not least is really even the city itself. 75% of the kids live with a single parent. And those two things, lack of a role model, lack of mentorship for the kids at very early on, puts them at risk and puts the city at risk. So you have it's almost a lethal concoction, if you will, that really puts them on the wrong side of the law. I think, as a successful entrepreneur, as a successful professional, that we gain so much from the public system being in the state. I think we need to step up the game and really do something. If you're really serious about it, if you want to do lip service, then we do nothing. But if you really mean something, every one of us should get involved. And the last but not least, I just got into the movie thing to keep myself really busy, as if these things are not enough. I'm also producing a movie based on our Detroit legendary character called Men Rouge. And that's a French word for a character called Red Devil. There's an annual parade that goes over there every year in Detroit. Many of you may know or may not know. And we're releasing the movie on the March 23rd. So please come and watch the movie. It's made in Michigan, made with the Detroit artists. And one other thing I'm also trying to do is how do I disrupt the movie industry here? Because we have amazing talent, low cost, right? And we have amazing geography, amazing shoreline, and it's really a shame not to showcase all the amazing assets that we have here. And why go to New Zealand? Why go to Australia to shoot those scenes? Shoot right here and showcase our city. So that's what I'm trying to do from the artistic side. So those are the things. So thank you, Robert, for inviting me.
One other thing is Chel's book on how to overcome boredom.
You won't have time to read it. Hi, I'm Jeannie Redfield. I'm the CEO at NextEnergy. Former McKinsey, former utility exec, former entrepreneur, and now leading an organization that supports energy and mobility tech commercialization. Much of the work that Paul does, we do at NextEnergy, but we do it in a set of industry verticals versus tech agnostic. So we really focus on energy technologies and any technologies that end up oriented toward transportation and transportation systems. NextEnergy is literally across the street from TechTown. We were founded back in 2002, so we were actually first in the neighborhood with our brownfield development of a demonstration and commercialization center. And since we opened the center in 2005, that neighborhood has changed quite dramatically. And really now is starting to look like the vision that folks had set out for Midtown way back in the early 2000s, of really anchoring it as an innovation district that's focused on the mix, the robust mix of hardware, software, device-oriented, manufactured product kind of technologies. As much as the software firmware startups are really the darlings of investors, we in the Midwest recognize that there's actually a pretty robust pipeline of hardware-based tech that also needs that kind of both services and access to capital support to really get it growing and moving. And that's where NextEnergy plays, is hardware software solutions for energy systems and transportation. We've got a lot going on always. Coming up, we've got our next challenge finalist day on December 13th, where we actually host a global crowdsourced tech challenge where teams, some of them even pre-company, have submitted ideas in response to specific technology challenges out in the built environment, buildings and infrastructure, and mobility. Really focused on the connected technologies of the future. And so those finalists will be pitching their final ideas December 13th at NextEnergy. And the prize is not the typical business competition prize of just cash or services, but actually demonstration dollars to get those technologies deployed in a real world environment. One of the things we know about energy and transportation solutions is they're typically a really long lead time to market because they have to get into both the supply chain and the physical infrastructure of a very, very highly capitalized and risk-averse set of industry verticals. And so that early demonstration access to actually get into a building, into the grid, or into a car is pretty hard, but pretty important to prove out the technologies. And that's the place where NextEnergy plays. And the Tech Challenge is really one of those opportunities to provide resources, both access to partners and access to some funds to get that piece of the challenge met. NextEnergy, I mentioned, is the vertical for energy and transportation versus place-based in Detroit. So because we're not place-based, we actually play very aggressively in the national innovation scene. I serve on the faculty for the national labs for their innovation corps. So we get a first look at the technologies in the national labs, and we get access to some of those leading edge teams. We're also part of a national incubator network for energy, the Clean Tech Initiative, if you will. That's Boston, Austin, Chicago, Silicon Valley, and LA. And by being part of that national network, not only do we see pipeline that we wouldn't normally see, but we have partners that can help our companies get what they need next if it doesn't happen to be in Southeast Michigan. So what's exciting about that is the number of companies that actually are coming to Southeast Michigan, starting in Boston, starting in Austin, and starting in Silicon Valley, because they need what we have here, that ability to take a concept and make a product. And so being part of that national network is kind of reorienting the pipeline a little bit and augmenting the pipeline for Southeast Michigan.
My name is Shea. It's good to be back in this room. It's good to be back in Ann Arbor. Originally from New York City, came to grad school here in 2009 at the business school and then also School of Natural Resources. Admittedly had no intention of staying in Michigan after school and wound up falling in love with what was going on in Detroit and decided to stay, and I'm still here. So it's great to be back in Ann Arbor. And I work with the Quicken Loans Community Investment Fund, sort of a hybrid role alongside of Rock Ventures. And just a Quicken Loans Community Investment Fund is essentially Quicken's corporate social responsibility arm. And as you may know, Rock Ventures is the umbrella organization that sort of ties together all of Dan Gilbert's work. So Quicken Loans is part of that, along with Bedrock and many of the other entrepreneurial companies, Detroit Venture Partners, and other investments. A specific role is as the portfolio strategy manager. What that essentially means is that I function from almost like a program officer within a foundation, focused on building the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Detroit, and then also function as an angel investor, trying to work with budding entrepreneurs, provide them access to capital, access to mentoring, and then try to bring in other angels alongside of us. So I'll talk a little bit about the role that Rock and Quicken Loans is looking to play within the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and then I'll touch on maybe one area I'm particularly passionate about, where I spend probably at least 2/3 of my time. So, as we've already learned, there's a lot of other stuff that's already going on in the ecosystem in Detroit around entrepreneurship. So I'd say, Rock's initial work came through in two areas. It was through the creation of Detroit Venture Partners, which was a seed capital fund in Detroit. And there was also an organization called Biznum, which functioned as an accelerator. And I'd say that those I won't go into them in depth, but as sort of TechTown, fell into a similar situation. They're saying, hey, there's other entrepreneurs out there in the community beyond just sort of tech entrepreneurs. What sort of services are you providing to support them? And so as we sort of reimagined and we looked at what we were doing, we're thinking, how do we provide additional support to these community entrepreneurs without duplicating efforts that are already going on in the ecosystem? And so we looked at, so the strategy goes across the three sort of stages of a company's life cycle. So looking at it from a start, grow, and scale perspective, and then also looking again at what can we uniquely do that other organizations can't do. So on the start side, we felt as though there's plenty of organizations that are out there already providing support. And so there we really function as a grantor, simply providing additional financial resources to organizations like the Build Institute, Access, Prosperous. Those are all organizations that help entrepreneurs basically push their ideas forward. Our goal there is 1,000 ideas to action. And that could just be from having a business, getting a business plan developed, or it could simply be having an idea, going through the process and say, hey, this is not a good idea for me at this time. I actually don't want to start a company. And we see that as a win as well, so long as people are moving down that path in one direction or another. Also on the start side, one of the challenges that Detroit entrepreneurs face is simply a permitting challenge. And so you have a city which is very resource strapped, traditionally hasn't actually had to deal with that many new business starts. but all of a sudden we have a lot of new businesses starting. I actually used to be in the restaurant business. To get something like this up and going, you can't imagine the number of permits that you have to get, from building permits to health permits. And that process in a city like, I don't know how long it takes in Ann Arbor, in New York where I used to do it, it would take us a month, maybe 2 months at the most. In Detroit at the moment, it's taking 3 to 4 months, if not longer, and so we're working with the city to be able to streamline that process and hopefully get that down to a month or 2 so it's in line with other areas. What we also are looking at is thinking about how we spend our money. We have billions of dollars in procurement a year in terms of our vendor spend. We currently have, I think, at least 200 million, which is actually being spent within the city of Detroit. We think if we're more intentional about it, we can double that this year. And so we're working with both our procurement team and then also with our vendors to help our vendors understand actually what do you have to have in place to be able to take a client like Quicken on. And that's something which is oftentimes not understood about the type of inventory you have to have in place in terms of the type of communication channels you have to have in place to be able to take on big clients. And then finally on the growth side, on the scale side, we have a program that's called Demo Day. Last year we gave away $2.5 million in the form of no interest loans, say unsecured, which is a key part of that as well, to entrepreneurs that were looking to start businesses across multiple industries in Detroit, ranging from tech all the way down to bakeries, and we're very industry agnostic on that front. And there's a lot of competitions in Detroit. One of the real goals there for us is trying to fill capital gaps. And I'll talk about a specific capital gap that I'm really passionate about. And for me, I'm focused on trying to help companies that I think have an opportunity to better leverage the larger Detroit brand to sell their products into other markets. And basically that is taking a lesson that Shinola taught us, which is that the brand of Detroit is actually very valuable outside of the city and that people are interested in it, and thinking about how do we help other companies beyond just Shinola actually take advantage of that brand. And I think that was something that was hard for a lot of Detroiters to recognize sometimes. I think it took someone sometimes from outside of the city to recognize actually what's going on inside the city is very unique and interesting. I didn't choose to stay in Detroit because I thought I just wanted to help or just quote save a city. I stayed in Detroit because what I saw going on in Detroit in 2009 to 12 when I was here at grad school, and then from 12 until today, is you're looking at a city that has got an energy and a spirit which is unmatched. And you can see it in the t-shirt culture of Detroit. The Detroit hustles harder, Detroit versus everybody. It is very hard. I used to be in my old business was in the nightclub business, the restaurant business. What we do there is trying to help people find a common bond through that experience together. And the reality is, in Detroit, people found that commonality simply by being in the city. And that creates a very unique environment and allows people to come together in ways that they couldn't necessarily come together previously. But we are running into sort of an interesting time period in Detroit. You're looking at a city which saw itself as very united in trying to rebuild itself. And all of a sudden you start to have a city which sometimes people look at and say there's a tale of two cities. You have a downtown which is emerging and growing. You have neighborhoods which are not growing as fast. And how do we necessarily try to fix that divide? Obviously sitting within rock and bedrock, that's something that we're very conscious of. And really, our whole group, really the Quicken Loans Community Investment Fund, is thinking about that on a daily basis. I think we don't want to necessarily slow down the positive economic growth that we're seeing in the downtown and the midtown areas. But what we need to do is to accelerate the growth that we're seeing in those neighborhoods. So I'm happy to talk about all that and more, but I'll stop now and see what we want to do.
Riff on a couple of James.
Go ahead.
Ideas for me as Jamie was talking. One was the idea of what's the Detroit spirit and what that actually looks like. It's not about saving Detroit, it's about being part of something really exciting. And I was looking at this panel thinking, this is what that spirit looks like. You got your, sort of traditional, who you would expect to see in the innovation community. These two guys, which I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. I just came from DC where we did our national graduation for our innovation bunch coming out of the labs. And it looked like these guys and you guys. Silver-haired white guys and mid-career white guys. And that's what the innovation community looks like across the country. In Detroit, this is what the innovation community looks like, except we're missing our millennials. They're not on this panel, but they're definitely active in Detroit. So one thing about Detroit is...
I'm almost a millennial.
I know. In 2011, you're not a millennial. Sorry, Jamie, hate to break it to you. Close. You know, so that's one thing. It's not about saving a city. It's about being part of something really exciting that's going on, and it's pretty unique. It's unique in the country, and there's a handful of cities around the world that kind of have the sense or the kinds of things that are going on in Detroit. The second thing is around the tale of two cities. It's not about fixing the neighborhoods. It's about finding the models that are appropriate for the neighborhoods. The models for reinvesting in housing. The models for sparking those small businesses that are appropriately anchored in the neighborhoods. The models for addressing the mobility and educational challenges so folks in the neighborhoods have access to great jobs. It's that work of connecting what needs to happen in the neighborhoods and making sure it happens, and using the resources of the region and frankly from outside the region to help make that happen. So it's less about fixing and more about finding the right models to ensure that the upside of what's going on in Detroit is accessible to everybody.
Can you give
and
a
much more
couple of
inclusive.
examples of what you mean by models, Gene?
Sure, the stuff that TechTown's doing with the Blocks program, right? You're not going to get neighborhood-based entrepreneurs to come into the traditional networking of the innovation community in order to figure out how to get their business started. So how do we create the services and the networks that are going to work for those lifestyle businesses that are neighborhood-based? You know, the child care center, the coffee shop, the pie store, the hair salon, you know, those ideas that are taking place in the neighborhoods that are actually creating livelihoods for the founder. And then they hire their 2, and then they hire their 5. And the fact that they're anchored in the neighborhood actually makes the neighborhood more attractive for the folks that are already there, and makes the neighborhood more attractive for the folks that are considering going there and investing in the housing and doing the retrofit work so the housing stock is what it needs to be to attract new folks into that neighborhood. That whole thought process, while it sounds perfectly logical today, took a ton of hard work. It was about a 5-year trial and error, travel the world, go to the neighborhoods, spend time in the neighborhoods, partner with the CDAs already anchored in the neighborhoods in order to listen to what's really needed, and then find creative ways to deliver that. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
I was just going to kind of add to that in that, you know, from what we've got here is a good panel that kind of starts at a certain level. There's a whole group of organizations, Jamie mentioned Prosperous and Build, that kind of starts really at the grassroots level, at the individual that says, okay, I want to open a convenience store, or I want to start a landscaping business, and helps them kind of define that business model before they get to a stage where they can come to a TechTown or NextEnergy, depending on the focus. And that is the bit that gets out to the neighborhoods, that, you know, kind of gets out beyond just the downtown and the midtown area. And I think that's really, there's a strong community of support there that, you know, kind of helps these young entrepreneurs, some old entrepreneurs, really grow.
Experience. I don't use old.
Experience.
Old, it's either former,
Yeah.
or long tenure, or experienced. Old doesn't belong in our vocabulary anymore.
Yeah, so we wanted to have a conversation here, which we're kind of beginning. And one of the things I'd like you to address is, we're talking about all these opportunities. How do the folks here connect? Let me just take a poll of who's here. First of all, how many millennials do we have? Get your hands up, don't be ashamed. Okay, okay. And how many, what's the generation?
Gen X.
Gen X?
Gen X.
Gen Xers.
We're always forgotten. Gen X.
Gen X, yeah. My children. And then, how many of you are entrepreneurs? How many of you consider yourself entrepreneurs? Okay? And how many of you are entrepreneurs in something other than a tech company? Anybody entrepreneurial? Yeah, so what are you doing, Jane? It's a non-tech, or you're marketing?
I have a marketing firm.
Yeah. What other non-techers do we have here? Sylvia?
I have a counseling and coaching practice.
Sylvia, I want you to come on up here for a minute because you are a millennial. I want to catch one of these millennials. And this is Sylvia Van Merton. And Sylvia is one of my, she and I are working together. And Sylvia is one of those folks that, maybe you can kick this off, Sylvia, because you were in Ann Arbor and left for many years, and now you're back as an entrepreneur. Do you see your world as Ann Arbor? Do you see your world as Detroit? And what drew you back to this region?
Hi, everyone. This is not classic Rob, right? Come up and say what's really on your mind.
I told you to dress me.
I know. I dressed up for you guys. So I did leave for about 10 years. I started a business in Asheville, North Carolina, where I was living. It's an autism counseling practice called Empower Autism. And in general, I end up helping people who are on the autism spectrum and who work in tech, who are engineers, who work in the sciences or the arts, kind of find their way through the social demands of our new team-oriented world. And I think we're missing a lot of great content due to the highly social nature of our teams. So often people who miss the social nuance, who are more awkward, don't get to add their incredible content to businesses because people feel uncomfortable around them. A lot of those people are on the autism spectrum, so my business helps them negotiate that, and part of my work is educating people about what neurodiversity means as part of the bigger diversity world, that neurodiversity is part of that, and when we think about people as thinking differently, just like we think about them looking differently, that thinking differently doesn't have to mean thinking worse, or they need to act differently. So anyway, this is me soapboxing. So I moved back here for the reasons you guys were talking about. I had kids. Suddenly I was like, I need my mom. I moved back to this area. And
Kids need their grandma. That's
it was for them. It was for them. And my mom's family was a Detroit family. She moved to Ann Arbor for grad school and stayed here. I grew up in Ann Arbor and in Detroit and Livonia. And I just missed it. I was out of place in the South. I was too blunt. I'm classic Southeastern Michigan. I do feel like I'm from this region. And I didn't fit in the South. I was I couldn't small talk as long as I needed to small talk for down there. I'd be like, oh yeah, how's your day? Okay, so let's start the meeting. So, now that I'm back here, I feel I've launched a different branch of my business that's helping young people find their career path and to not feel so lost in the, I'm smart but I don't know what I'm doing phase. So I'm starting part of my practice helping people go through a 6 or 8 week process where they find a plan and can enjoy their plan instead of feeling like, that they need, you guys know what I'm talking about. We've all been there. And I'm working with Rob a little bit, and I'm just loving being back here, and I really have been wanting to get more involved in the work that's going on in Detroit, especially because of the tech focus, because so many people who are thinking differently have so much content that's unique. And in the building phase of a new chapter in a city, I think that kind of content is so important. And in the building phase, if we can build for diversity, build for neurodiversity, then we end up having such a better product in the end. Instead of having to dismantle and make more room later, we can just build our process, our cities, to have room for people who operate differently. Thank you.
So I think it's interesting because Sylvia and my son Daniel, who's about the same age, Daniel's just bought a house in Ann Arbor and coming back. And one of the reasons he could do that's interesting is that his wife Katrina has been working for a consulting firm in Chicago. They wanted to live in Ann Arbor because their sisters are there, our family's here. Turns out that their consulting firm has opened up an office at the Rent Center. So she's able to now come to Ann Arbor, telework, but also go into the office a couple of days a week. So this idea that Detroit and Ann Arbor are connecting, I think are creating opportunities. So I'd kind of like to ask, you're talking about opportunities for people, what do you folks see that you need from this audience? Detroit's doing great, but what is it still needed that the people in Ann Arbor, there's opportunities for them, there's also need for this kind of talent that's in the room. So maybe you could talk about that.
Thanks. I think it's
Oh, you
I think it's a great question, great topic, and something that we really need to be much more obviously intentional about. I think from the Ann Arbor perspective, I think is, no question, Detroit is hot. Detroit is a buzz. Detroit is growing and exploding. But I think just getting in the game, just taking the drive down and attending an event, sitting in a co-working space, just driving around and just observing and seeing different things, and extending that invitation vice versa. So if in fact you are a resident here and you connect or you work with or you know people in Detroit, invite them to learn more about what's happening here as well. Make this a reciprocal kind of thing much more intentionally and much more often. In 2017, I tried to make the intentional approach of taking this drive and meeting with investors in Ann Arbor, people that I read about in the M.B.A. booklet that I actually wanted to meet and actually get to know. And so that I think we have to do much more of. I think we just gotta, like I said, get in the game, be in the game. I think from an opportunity perspective, a lot of hands went up for people who have expertise in different domains, work with different companies. We at TechTown, and this is, TechTown is a microcosm. You can probably do this in multiple organizations across the city of Detroit, but for this purpose, we created a program called Ask an Expert. And Ask an Expert is intended to allow individuals like yourselves in this room who have an expertise or a domain kind of area of where you've done great work and you have experience to just simply do open office hours at TechTown. Pick 3 days over the next 6 months. I'm going to come down to TechTown. I'm going to sit. I'm going to bring my laptop. We'll promote it to the ecosystem. We'll promote it to NextEnergy clients. We'll promote it to Prosperous. We'll promote it to Grand Circus. We'll send it out across the ecosystem in Detroit. And as entrepreneurs sign up, they come in and they talk to you about their startup, trends in the industry, about how to get to where you are, your life journey. We make no promises about what they may want to talk about, but we do make a promise that it'll be engaging, it'll be fun, it'll be an easy on-ramp for you to get connected and get engaged in the work and get connected to people. And there's so many people who want to and are able to give something back. And a lot of times it's here or it's here. And they ask me, how can we get involved and how can we participate? And prior to this program 6-7 months ago, I didn't have an answer. A lot of times if there wasn't a program running, I'd say, I'll let you know. I'll see them back at the next event 2 months later and they say, let me know when you need some help. And I say, okay. And that process of Paul remembering and matchmaking wasn't working well, wasn't efficient. And so now I've got an answer, but I think most of the organizations in Detroit have an answer like that of how to get engaged. So ask the question, come down and visit us, be engaged, sign up for our newsletters. TiE, NextEnergy, TechTown, all have newsletters. Pick your spots, what's of interest, and just be intentional about, hey, on February 23rd, there's a great event, I'm going, and I'm gonna be there, and I'm gonna meet people, and I'm gonna connect in a unique kind of way, so.
I think I have a few comments. I think comment number one is really, obviously, Ann Arbor is the Silicon Valley of Michigan. Ann Arbor is sophisticated, mature. Detroit is still a nascent market. So to me, there is not a whole lot the Ann Arbor community can gain from Detroit in terms of growing their businesses, but I think the first ask would be giving back. Because you guys are so successful here, and you're the brightest, we have the U of M.
I just like cringing over here.
But I think we should start with giving back. How do we offer what we have? If you're an entrepreneur, consider creating a business in Detroit. If you're a lender, put more money into the city, right? If you're a service provider, how can I offer more services? Obviously, second comes the profit, but more it's about how do we give back? I think to me, we should start with that first. And then in the process, if you make $1 or $2, more power to you. But don't put the dollar first, because it's not going to happen in the near term. You know what I mean? So that's really my experience thus far. Because Detroit is still a nascent market. You know, we can say the buzz is there, the energy is there, but end of the day, it still needs help all around the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because it's not mature enough yet, right? And that's where we need the help. So don't say, you know, go to one event, oh my God, I'm not getting anything out of it. You'll be disappointed. It's a long haul, but in the end, it prevails. And to me, those are my thoughts.
I would echo the give then get. I hang out a lot with the Silicon Valley, the Silicon Valley and the Boulder bunch. Silicon Valley and the Boulder bunch. And they're very much a give then get kind of set of ecosystems where they expect to give their time. They often expect to give their money into the network, particularly the ones that have been successful and have a lot of money. But anyway, so to Paul's point, the give part on time is find a couple of ways, whether, you know, at the events, expect to show up early, expect to stay late, and be intentional about connecting either with a company or an organization that you can then give more time down the line to. The office hour concept that TechTown has opened is absolutely amazing. It's perfect for ways to plug in, where you can decide the amount of time and you can decide how frequently it's going to be, and then you decide how you're going to show up that day, and the degree to which you end up creating relationships with individuals and with companies. That's an exciting thing. The second thing about give your money. Yeah, there's the angel community as a way to give your money, but there's also just frequent Detroit-based businesses. Think carefully about what you buy and who you buy it from. The difference between eating at a chain restaurant in Detroit and eating at a local proprietorship in Detroit is as much as 30% local impact. So be intentional. We made a commitment when we moved to the region that we spend every entertainment dollar we can in the city of Detroit. All of our restaurants, all of our evenings out are in the city of Detroit. So start thinking about that. Start thinking about how can you support local businesses. And then the third thing you guys have is your own power in your networks. So use your storytelling. Actually start to get familiar enough about the story of Detroit that you're frequently sharing it in the networks that you're a part of, so we can get the word out. It's not about saving a city. It's about a set of opportunities and momentum that is going on that is really unmatched. And the more you guys are able to help tell that story, because it's your own experience too, the more momentum we're going to be building.
In terms of telling the story, the narrative has got to change. I mean, because the narrative was so bad for so long, and there's still a lot of people that are afraid of Detroit. Let's put it out there. I'm a native Detroiter. I went to Wayne State, and you know, things were beginning to change. It actually changed dramatically in '67 after the riots. But when I was there in the early '60s, very vibrant. As a matter of fact, I was reading a biography today of Joni Mitchell, and I remember seeing Joni and Chuck Mitchell at the Chessmate on 6 Mile in Livernois in 1965. You know, and until I read this, I forgot that they were appearing there. But there's that vibrant music scene, and I know that talk about millennials. The younger people are going to Detroit for the entertainment. My generation is still afraid. And when we had our lunch at the Selden Station, was that it? Selden Standard, which was it's about 2/3 of the way downtown, I guess. And Midtown. Well, it's Midtown. Okay. But some of you have rode. You and David Tarver and a couple other people rode their bikes there from Wayne. I thought, you rode your bikes through the city? What? You know, are you guys okay? Can we? And I still have that kind of back of my mind fear of the city, and I just wonder if you could. So, could you address that and how you try to overcome that?
I'm happy to throw 2 cents in, maybe from a perspective as it relates to growing up in New York. And I grew up in the late 70s, so yeah, I was not a millennial. Detroit today actually looks way better than New York did when I was growing up. And you can almost think about the evolution of New York going from a place where growing up, an affluent neighborhood, Upper East Side, right next to Spanish Harlem. I get mugged, I don't know, like once a week probably walking to school, and it was dangerous. And then all of a sudden you get, go through the 80s and early 90s, and basically Manhattan becomes very safe, but the outer boroughs are still, fairly dangerous. And I would say that to a degree is where we are realistically today in Detroit. You have the downtown core, sort of moving up into Midtown, New Center area, which is safe. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, you have to, like any other major area, you have to be somewhat careful, but it's basically safe to walk around, daytime, nighttime. Maybe to be honest, as a female, you may have to be a little bit more vigilant. But it reminds me of Manhattan at that period. Now, obviously, you've gotten to a period in New York where you go into Brooklyn now, the Bronx, Harlem. I mean, it is basically one of the safer cities you're going to find, and hopefully Detroit will get there. But I mean, I would encourage anyone, as long as you are in sort of the downtown, Midtown, Eastern Market, Corktown, even Southwest, area, those are very, very safe neighborhoods. And so the more that you can spread that word, we would appreciate it. Yeah. But still keep your eye out when you're in some of the outer neighborhoods, to be honest.
I mean, the reality is the crime stats in Detroit are moving all in the right direction, and they're moving really fast. And so Detroit is actually one of the safer cities in the country. To Jamie's point, it's a city. Any city has its risks. So part of it is just showing up and putting on your city behavior. The situational awareness in any neighborhood is critical. There's plenty of evidence that says criminals are able to pick out the vulnerable victims. So there is a city behavior in Detroit. You need it just like any other city. But the best way to get over your fear of Detroit is to come. Show up. Get comfortable. Where do I like to park? Where do I like to walk? Why do I do that? And paying attention, lighting, crowds. Where are the places where the basics around physical safety are already in place? And as Jamie said, downtown, midtown, those basics are definitely in place already. Lighting and more pedestrian traffic. Those are the two biggest ways to increase physical safety in an urban environment. Out in the neighborhoods, it's a little tricky, but even in the neighborhoods, there's been some really great things. The Mayor's Green Light Program, he's got over 300 private partners who have video surveillance cameras associated with their businesses. What was happening is the corners where the business was transacting, the ATMs, the gas stations, the grocery stores, and sometimes the bars, were the places where the physical crime was happening, because that's where there were pedestrians or folks with money. So the mayor a couple of years ago partnered with tech companies and private businesses to put in surveillance and brought the police emergency headquarters right into those surveillance circles. So the Green Light program has been incredibly successful with reducing crime rates around those little neighborhood-based clusters where crime was the highest. Something like over 80% of the crime was happening within 75 feet of these places where these 300 centers were created. So plenty is going on. It's all moving in the right direction, but the best way to get over it is to just come.
Okay, let's open it up to questions. I'm sure there's lots of people. Dean, you want to start out? Just stand up and shout it out.
Sure. Can you talk about the real estate opportunities? Obviously, downtown and center city area is almost getting too expensive to invest in. I mean, Dan's kind of got that locked down.
Yeah. Don't expect to buy loans on that.
Yeah. But obviously on the fringes of all the areas, it seems obvious those are some opportunities. Can you talk about both on the residential side, because it seems like there's tons of neighborhoods that need to be redeveloped, as well as some of the commercial opportunities?
Yeah, I think huge opportunity. Obviously, with the change in values that happen in residential communities across the city of Detroit, there's huge kind of what I like to refer to as buoyancy between values of, you can get an appraised value of a property that might appraise for $20,000, and you can get the same appraisal for that property for maybe $60,000. Same property. And it depends on comps and other things, that you are looking at in that neighborhood. But it's huge opportunity right now for residential and commercial redevelopment, no question, in the city of Detroit. And it's not just Midtown and downtown where the likes of the Dan Gilberts are now, that is starting to spill out into large swaths of huge purchases of, one investor I just read, $37 million in properties that they purchased from the auction. And I think Dan Gilbert on the north end just purchased 400 or so properties as well. So this is absolutely spilling out. And I was approached by someone probably a year ago because I inherently wasn't a real estate person. I'm tech by background. There's so much going on in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. You know, I had enough to focus on. But someone approached me and said the simple statement of, don't allow your kids to ask you the question of, Dad, you didn't buy one? They were how much then? Because it's gonna be much different in 10 years or, you know, in a generation. And these time periods only come around very seldom, you know, and usually once in a lifetime like we're seeing now. So I think that there's, like I said, there's huge buoyancy, there's huge opportunity. Pick your pockets, pick your, you know, your areas, and that's a part of engaging in the city. It's just the same thing that we teach our entrepreneurs, this notion of customer discovery. From a personal and social aspect, you gotta do customer discovery. And that means spending the time, investing the time. So we gotta practice what we preach. Whether it's on the entrepreneurial scene or it's the investment scene or whether it's on the social scene. You've got to get engaged and spend the time and the quality time in order to reap the benefits of it.
I want to add something. Paul's points are all great, and the real estate market in the city of Detroit is still really disorganized. It's not a normal real estate market. Don't expect to engage a real estate agent who's going to show you property and get comps and you're going to go buy something. That is not the way it works. We still have over 90% of the transactions are cash. Getting, you know, so that, and the cash, is it speculators? Is it even U.S. cash? So it is still a very disorganized market. And for those of you that are entrepreneurs, you know that disorganized markets means opportunity. Yes. But for you to capture that opportunity, you got to invest the time and energy in figuring it out. Don't expect to just show up and start buying something. So the customer discovery part, the figuring out how to ferret out the opportunities are really an important part of the process. And then what Jamie brought up around just a little bit of the disorganization of the city government sometimes makes it hard for the transactions to go through.
Could you also comment on people who want to buy and move? I know schools are a big issue. What's happening with the schools? I know it's been chaos there, but is there any progress?
I'm not really in a great position because I don't follow the schools really well. I know that folks are optimistic about the progress going on in the schools, but I don't have kids, and that's not the area I've spent a lot of time following. You know, we have, of course, a number of great charter schools. We have a number of great magnet schools in the public school system. The mayor has been partnering very aggressively with the business community, the foundation community, and the school districts in order to really get serious about thinking about the schools as anchors for neighborhoods. And so that whole which schools are open, which schools are closed, and who gets to pick, that process is much better than it was a handful of years ago because folks have recognized that those sets of decisions matter. They matter for the kids, of course, but they matter for the whole communities because without good schools in our neighborhoods, our ability for the city to actually create a robust economic and community life is at risk. So schools are probably moving in the right direction with a lot of great things in place to keep it moving in the right direction.
Robert, I actually have a comment on the schools.
Good.
Sorry, this is how it goes here. I'm Roy Sexton. I'm with Kerr Russell, law firm in Detroit. This will actually start as a bit of a humble brag, and I'll come back to the school piece. I moved up here from Indiana in '99 to work at Deloitte Consulting, and back then you drove up to the Rensen, and it was like a bunker, and you went in, and you ate your Burger King sandwich because that was about all that was in there, or Big Boy, and then you left. And so 20 years later, I'm now in the Ally Center. Used to be One Detroit, used to be Comerica, whatever the building has been. And I feel so old, but I walk out and it's like, I'm like, there's live music, there's food trucks, I don't want to work. I want to just walk around and play all day. and I don't want to come home at the end of the day. My husband's like, are you going to come home? Well, there's a new restaurant I want to try. So there's just so much to explore. But on the school piece of it, I was at Mumford Academy a week or so ago with the Beyond Basics program. They do a reading program there at Mumford. And I think it's a bit like your description of the real estate market. Find out, it's a maker's economy right now in that education sphere, so find the places where they are doing good work. And Mumford Academy is basically a magnet school that is embedded in a high school. And they've had some challenges because people have said, well, we're going to close this down, where are the funds going, is this really, what are the outcomes here? And just walking through that space and seeing the kids and seeing how engaged and diverse the conversations were, I thought, this is the kind of thing we need to support. So, you know, my company, I'm going to go back and say, Beyond Basics and Mumford Academy, what can we do in the coming year to support? There's always a PR aspect to it. There's always a benefit to it. The other thing, I have a question ultimately in all this, but kudos to TechTown as well. One of our IP attorneys, Max Sneed, he goes over there for hours, and I'm a marketing guy for lawyers. If you're a lawyer in the room, please don't be offended. And if you know anybody in my firm, please do not quote me. Lawyers are like in their own heads.
Turn off the video.
I've said they're in their own heads, right? All the time. They're really thoughtful people. So to get them into the business development mode is hard. To go, you're going to go to another space and hang out and talk to people and solve their problems on the way to business development. They're very much in the mindset, I went to a cocktail party, will I get referrals? No, that's not how it works. So I'm very grateful as a marketing person that there are opportunities like TechTown where I can have an attorney who is a wonderful IP attorney, does great work, but doesn't always know how to have a conversation with people. So my question, sorry, I'm not grandstanding, but that said, there is an existing infrastructure of businesses. My law firm's been around since 1874. We talk a lot about the new economy, the new entrepreneur, the new person coming into Detroit, or we talk about the citizens who might be a little bent at times what's going on. We don't really talk about how do we help the existing organization get out of that old white shoe Detroit uptight, we have relationships, we go to the country club, you know, and really get out there and interact with what's happening.
I just wanted to interject and add to this, what I think is paramount discussion around the education that I think is something that, you know, there's things on the edges that we all, you know, sometimes talk about and think about, you know, better tax incentives or, you know, insurance issues. But this education element is at the core, I think, of everything else, and it has the long-term, short, mid, and long-term effects that we all have to pay attention to. And I think, honestly, when we talk about skills gaps, when we talk about shortage in workforce, we are paying the piper now for our disinvestment in what we've done for the past 15 years. I think it's, honestly, quite criminal. Many of us probably in this room are able and have been afforded the opportunity that if in fact education wasn't working in one location, you could move your kid to another location. But there are tons of people who could not. And essentially these kids have been experimented upon. With leadership, with fraudulent activity, with changes in school board reform and redistricting students and placing them into their own pools. So when you talk about what can Ann Arbor and Detroit do together, I think if nothing else, the Amazon petition and plan and opportunity showed us how we can actually come together stronger and what that does. The fact that 1 + 1 in this instance equals 4. And education is a topic where we can all have to be, I think, all hands on deck. It could be at the policy level, it could be at a volunteer level, it could be at a practice level, curriculum level, all of the great things that obviously from an academic and curriculum perspective that U of M has can and should be shared, I think, when invited and invited properly. Not imposed upon, but the approach that I think sometimes we know, and let's just say it, a lot of Detroiters I think feel like Ann Arbor has the amazing blue cape that they're going to swoop in and fly and save the day. And I think that has to be approached sensitively, but it has to be done. It can be done, and it can be done well and right, but it has to be done with a purposeful and meaningful and genuine approach of asking a lot of questions first. And I think this educational arena is one that we can all play a role in some way, somehow, because it's our service providers, it's you know, it's our kids, it's the services, it's the businesses, there's so many elements that touch all of us irrespective of where we live. Our state faces deep challenges in education, not just Detroit. So it's something that I think we should all have all hands on deck approach.
Thank you very much. And I went to Ferndale High School, right on the border, and I remember a decision that was made about busing, and it was a crucial decision. There was a court case, and the opposition to busing was led by L. Brooks Patterson, who made his name as, I should say, as a racist, essentially, and he's still blocking transportation between Oakland County. But the idea was that Detroit there would be no busing. And as a result, the Detroit schools, there was white flight like crazy, and the Detroit schools went downhill, and then everything else went with it. So, I mean, these decisions that are political decisions have huge impact. I want to just kick it back before we do questions. I know there's lots of questions, but I want to do a call to action. And this is a little thing that I like about learning. Is I think if you don't go away with something you're going to do yourself, it's been a waste of your time. It's been interesting, but you might as well have listened to a podcast or a radio program. But I'd like you to think about, now I want to promote podcasts. If you are going to listen to a podcast, what's it called?
M Squared Tech Ed with Matt Roush.
M Squared.
Yeah, Matt and Mike. You know,
Oh, Matt and Mike.
We'll do the Matt and Mike show,
all right. Matt Roush and Mike Brennan. Check out their podcast. It's great. But anyway, I want you to think about what's something that you can do personally. What actions can you take? Now, some people are looking for jobs. Where's Mariana? Is she still here? Mariana, yeah. Mariana's sitting in the back. She's new to Ann Arbor, right? And new to the region, relatively. Thinking about what could she do with her career. She's doing consulting to tech. Your action might be, I want to talk to one of these people about how do I start doing consulting or get a job in Detroit. Other people, what is an action item that you can take, something you want to do with your business, we got Mike here with the University of Michigan, community action. You could do in terms of what U of M is doing in Detroit. And Cape, get rid of that Cape, I guess that's the first thing, right? But we're going to just take a minute thinking about that and then share it with one person, and then we're going to ask for some ideas of what you can do to further the message that's being given here. So we're going to just take 3 minutes of this and write it down. I would encourage you to write it because then you'll remember it. Text it or email me and I'll post them all when we get back to it. Okay, so just take a few minutes to do that and then we're going to wrap it up.
Please sit down. Thank you. My name is Mike Rain. I actually work at the University of Michigan. I don't have a cape on today, but work in the Office of Government Relations, specifically state outreach. And I have the east side of the state. I've met with Gene before at NextEnergy. One of the things that state outreach does is we look for areas of collaboration. I work with nonprofits, city governments, state governments, economic development agencies, and if there's a program or an initiative that they're working on, that I come back to Ann Arbor and try and find that resource for them. It could be in engineering, it could be in public health, social work. We have a lot of resources to offer. To Paul's point about what U of M does in Ann Arbor, we're very proud to say we have over 300 projects and initiatives going on right now. And that doesn't mean we can't get better at things. We're always looking to fine tune. We're always looking to expand those areas of collaboration. That's really my job, to be the front door for the university. And my job, again, is going to continue to look for those opportunities. I'm headed to Detroit this afternoon for a meeting. And so we'll continue to look for them. U of M's very interested, very invested in Detroit. We realize the importance to the state. But I want to talk about something Paul said about education. A study just came out that Detroit was, 4th grade reading level was 50th in the country. But folks, the state of Michigan was 49th. So everybody trashes Detroit, and they can point to that because of all those problems. We have a statewide problem. And so I just wanted to emphasize that in a lot of the urban areas, I have the east side of the state, so I work in Saginaw, Bay City, Flint, a lot of time in Detroit. All of these urban areas are behind. All these urban areas, from a collaboration standpoint, from U of M's viewpoint, that's where the opportunities are. We'll continue to work in Detroit. It's on the cusp. It's a big city. One of the things that Paul kind of casually mentioned, it's 143 square miles. You can fit Boston, San Francisco, and the Bureau of Manhattan inside Detroit.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. We have the land. We can do it. We have the land.
That puts us that fast, right?
So we're continuing. These guys are all doing great stuff in Detroit. Gene is very, very important point. This does represent the cross-section of the people that are turning Detroit around. And U of M will continue to be involved with that. We look forward to those opportunities.
Thank you, Mike. What other action items do we have? Anybody back? Something you're going to do as a result of being here? Yeah, you want to come? Yep. Great, let's do it fast.
I would like to challenge everybody in this room to have a narrative that's completely different than what we've normally been doing. And I'll give an example of, it's Silicon Valley and then it's Silicon Mid. I don't want to be me too. I want the state. I mean, I lived 25 years in San Francisco, Sausalito. So it's changing the narrative. It's, it's.
So what are you going to do?
What am I going to do? Really push that creative narrative so that it challenges everybody to stop talking about.
Can you write one up and we'll post it?
I could.
All right, that's good action. Who else has an action? Watch out. Who's going to do something different? Yeah, Mike, stand up.
So about a year and a half ago, we kind of expanded LeadersConnect in Arbor to Detroit. And so we held 2 LeadersConnect Detroits at TechTown. Then we put together a round table at the Seldom Standard, a lunch with the folks on the panel here and a couple other folks from Detroit. So my action item is to continue to expand this LeadersConnect Detroit idea kind of as a way to connect Ann Arbor and Detroit.
How many of you, I know Andrew is a very serial entrepreneur, if I could call you that. Shamir's an entrepreneur. How many of you are entrepreneurs that would like some kind of action to figure out how you can take your business to Detroit? How many of those are Eric in the back?
I was pointing out my friend here, but I thought your question was going in other direction.
Okay, go ahead. What was your response?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask for folks who were, my friend Ray, I'd like to just introduce him because he's doing some great work in Detroit. He's doing a coding academy.
Okay.
He's doing a startup down there, and so if anybody wants to talk to him about it.
Say a little bit more?
Yeah, go ahead, tell him that.
Yeah, so I'm basically 2 different programs. I'm building one sort of a modern vocational school in Detroit that's starting out with computer programming. So if there's software development, consulting companies, or other things, then I'd love to talk with you. And then the other is a program for young adults, a post-high school gap year program for low-income students that blends personal and leadership development with a paid program, paid apprenticeship for a year.
All right,
so,
thank you.
Yes, thank you.
What I was going to ask is, entrepreneurs that want an opportunity to go to Detroit, how many of you are out there? If you're, okay, Vince Smith has got a startup, Andrew, Sandra, okay. So come on up and talk about these opportunities. How many of you are looking for jobs and would like to find a job in Detroit? Kathleen, a tremendous talent. We can't win that. Kathleen?
Actually, Rob, I just want to say that, as you know, we met, and I'm job searching and looking to do something. I said to you, well, Ann Arbor area, because I've always been, in here, in this area, and I have to say, part of the reason I came today is because you kept telling me, yay, expand your horizons, Kathleen, and I was, this is my safe zone. And I have to tell you that after today, I want to talk to every one of you because I really want to look at that because I think I had kind of closed that door and I shouldn't have. So
Yeah, it's
you
interesting.
opened one.
In the valley, people don't think nothing of commuting hours. New York hours. I mean, we're thinking, oh, we can't go to Detroit. Like 45 minutes drive. Yeah. Marianne?
I guess I just wanted to point out that the U of M has the Ann Arbor Detroit connector, and they recently expanded their service, so you can actually.
It's a bus.
Yeah, and it just picks up on Central Campus.
And it goes to New
downtown, Midtown, and then ends at the DIA. So
Oh, it does? Okay,
you don't
great.
have to drive.
How often does that go?
I mean, now it's like multiple times a day.
All right, the
over
Detroit connector.
weekends. Yeah. So.
Fantastic. Any other resources, things like that? Yes.
My name is Lester Raymond. I'm with the Ann Arbor Film Festival. And I just wanted to, I'm a little of an outlier to this group, but what I wanted to speak to is that we're part of the very rich cultural offerings here in Ann Arbor, and we're looking for ways to provide our content to Detroit. So if anybody would like to talk to us about that, please talk to me. For those who may not know, the Ann Arbor Film Festival is the oldest experimental film festival in North America. So we're a little outside the commercial realm, but what we do provide, and we have shown for 56 years now, is experimental, avant-garde work
When's that coming up?
done by individual artists. March, late March.
Coming up soon.
Yeah,
All right,
56.
great. I promise everybody to be out at 9, but we're going to keep the conversation going, so come on up to the front if you want to go. We're going to be back in 2 weeks, and Sylvia and I are going to be helping you plan for success in 2018. And I'm going to be using my two new books, Self-Aware and a Journal for Self-Aware, which is a way to track your progress day to day, like the lessons learned. So I hope you all can come back in 2 weeks to wrap up. Next year we've got a program for Martin Luther King Day. We got an amazing program. We have President Schlissel who will be coming to speak, president of that place where they wear the maize and blue cape. He's going to be wearing this cape. He's going to be flying in. He and Jim Harbaugh will fly in. And let's go blue. So, all right. So I want to get you out at 9 as promised. But please feel free to carry on the conversation and enjoy the food. And see you.